Okay, we want to welcome everyone tonight to good evening and welcome to the Minot City Council Candidate Forum for the City of Minot. My name is Mark Lyman. I am the Chamber Government Affairs Committee Chair. I'll be the moderator tonight. We want to welcome all those who are joining us here in person. There's only about 10 or 12 of us here in the City Council chambers. But we hope that there will be hundreds online watching. And then, of course, this will be posted on YouTube and available for viewing after it is live as well. Candidate forums, this week's candidate forums are conducted by the Government Affairs Committee of the Minot Area Chamber of the Commerce for its members and for the greater community. For those participating live on social media, we do have an opportunity for you to submit questions. Please do so through Facebook. As opinions, don't make your questions anything but a question. Opinions and comments will be sort of edited out by those helping me moderate. The format is not intended to be a debate, but a question and answer period for the candidates. Some questions as they come in may pertain to other issues we've already covered. So trust me, we're not trying to ignore your question necessarily. We have grouped them together sometimes so that it's easier for the candidates to answer them. If we do not have sufficient time for all the questions, we apologize in advance, so the questions will be addressed as much as we can on a first-come, first-served basis. So as we've covered those ground rules a little bit tonight, let's meet our candidates. We have Scott Burlingame, Carrie Evans, Steve Padragula, Tom Ross, and Roscoe Striley, who are all running for 3 seats on the Minot City Council. So first things first, we just want to go from my left to right, and we'll start with Scott Burlingame, and just ask you to introduce yourself briefly, tell us why you decided to run for City Council. We are asking in your responses to keep them to 2 minutes or less, please, so we can get through a lot of questions. So Scott, you are first.
Hello, my name is Scott Burlingame, and Minot is my home. Minot's not the community I was born in, but it is a community I have chosen. This is a community that has made me a better father, a better husband, a better friend, a better volunteer, and a better leader. I have over 25 years of management and leadership experience, including the last almost 10 years as the Executive Director of Independence Incorporated. Independence is a disability organization that works with people with all types of disabilities and those living with the effects of aging to live better lives. Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to serve on numerous boards, councils, and commissions on a local, statewide, and national level. I think Minot's a pretty good community. The things that make this community great are the spirit of our people, our amazing businesses, our outstanding sporting events, the arts community, the Norse Husfest, and the State Fair, at least in better times. This is not better times. We're struggling right now. We're in the middle of an unprecedented global health pandemic, record low oil prices, and record high unemployment. However, this will not be the legacy of Minot. We will rise again as we have so many times before. We will rise again because our entrepreneurs will solve problems, because our nonprofits will serve more and will serve better, and because our teachers will teach the next generation of leaders. Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to learn how to stick to and maintain a budget, how to work with various people from various backgrounds to get things done, and how to be innovative and creative in problem solving. I believe that these are the skills that we need in the city of Minot, and that is why I'm running for office. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event, and I look forward to having a discussion about how we can make Minot stronger.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Carrie, you are next, please.
Great. Hello, Minot voters. My name is Carrie Evans, formerly Carrie Forshner. My family, friends, and I have been working hard to earn your vote. We have engaged more than 12,000 times with voters across the city. I'm sure many of you tuning in today have got a phone call from us, most likely from my mom, Karen, who has come out of retirement to make almost 2,000 calls to voters. We appreciate all of you who have taken the time to talk to us about my campaign. You can visit my website, evansforminot.com, to find out more about my background, but in a nutshell, this is who I am. I moved to Minot from Regina when I was 11 years old, when my mom married my dad, Sam, who was stationed at Minot Air Force Base. I went to Jim Hill and graduated from Ryan. Class of '88 is still great. After graduating from MSU, I left the state to attend graduate school in Illinois. From there, I went to law school and subsequently held jobs in Louisiana, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore. My professional background has focused on public policy and state legislative work and working with survivors of domestic violence. After 27 years of living elsewhere, I returned to Minot in 2017. Not sure I was going to stay. However, the Minot I moved back to is a lot different than when I left in 1990. Some of that may have been from my perspective from having lived away for almost 30 years, and also from being older and wiser. Regardless, it was a Minot I wanted to stay in. Moreover, being in the same city with my parents, siblings, and 2 nephews is a blessing. I have worked on many campaigns, but this is my first time being the candidate. I decided to run for various reasons, one of these being I felt like I have a lot to offer this city. I have lived many places and gained valuable insight and perspective from those experiences. Additionally, I want to see different kinds of people and perspectives on our city council, and I believe I can offer that. While every election is important, this one is really important. Minot will elect 3 members of our city council. This will be the council who hires a new city manager. This will be the council who ensures we finish up strong on our National Disaster Resilience Program that ends in 2022. This will be the council who helps our city recover from this pandemic, and so much more. We will want a strong, smart, sometimes thinking outside of the box leader. In me, you will get all of this and more. I am smart, and not just book smart, but common sense smart. I'm not afraid to speak my mind and ask the hard questions. I'm not afraid to try new things, and I am not the status quo. When you elect me, you will get someone who is transparent. Even if we disagree, I will respect your opinion. I will fight to ensure residents are not shut out of participating in our city government and its business.
We're coming up on 2 minutes now, Carrie.
My family, friends, and I have worked hard to earn your vote. This is my work ethic, and you can expect the same commitment and hard work when you cast a vote for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it very much. Steve, you are next.
Thank you, Mark. I bring common sense and experience to the council. In the past 4 years that I've served on the council, I've learned a great deal about how the city actually works, what our strengths are, and where our weaknesses lie. It's easy for someone new to come along and say they would do things better or cheaper or both. It's not that simple. The city of Minot has over 425 employees and a yearly budget of over $275 million. And what we do affects every person in our community in so many different ways. The reality is that the ways forward are neither cheap, nor easy, nor quick, and you really need to know what you're doing. We have many challenges facing us, such as flood control, dealing with an economic downturn, maintaining the health of all of our citizens, and restoring confidence in the city leadership. My background includes living in Minot for the past 41 years, working full-time in the small business I started 31 years ago, 2 prior terms on the council, which gives me a valuable historical perspective, multiple leadership roles in the community and my profession, and a strong record of working for transparency, accountability, and efficiency in local government for over 20 years. As a clinical psychologist, I know how to listen to people, empathize with them, help them solve their own problems, and function more effectively. In these challenging times, experience and understanding do matter. I would appreciate your vote. And I also want to explain what happened. I was out campaigning last Friday, and I fell. I fell very violently, hitting my head against a concrete driveway. Broke my nose. This actually looks pretty good. I was all swollen, bruised up, still have a pretty bad headache. So if I seem a little out of it, you can understand why. But I think falling and hurting yourself, breaking your nose, is a small price to pay for being able to be out in the community and meeting people and listening to them, listening to their concerns, educating them, answering their questions, pounding the pavement, seeing where the pavement is good and where it's not so good. So again, my broken nose is a small price to pay for meeting lots of people.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that very much. Tom, you are next.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Minot Chamber of Commerce, for hosting these public forums. My name is Tom Ross. I was born and raised in Minot. In fact, I was born and raised just about 4 blocks south of City Hall. My history in Minot and volunteer history in Minot ranges from being on the board for the Minot State Board of Regents to the Minot State Beaver Boosters Organization. Minot Public Schools, I was on the Ag Education Advisory Committee, to being involved heavily in the FFA programs, both on the local level and state level. Minot's always been my home. I chose Minot to raise my family. I've got 3 beautiful kids, and I'm very proud of each and every one of them. I'm very proud to be a resident of the city of Minot. We're coming up we're at the end of a very dark decade in the history of Minot. We've got brighter days ahead, and my decision to join or to run to be on city council has been years in the making, but now it's time to have a strong voice, someone who's going to stand up, who's going to ask the questions, and who's going to hold the people accountable for their actions or inactions. I'm looking forward to sitting on the council. I'm looking forward to rolling up my sleeves, and I'm looking forward to getting the work done.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Next, Roscoe Striley, please.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for hosting the chamber. I'm Roscoe Striley. I've lived in Minot about 20 years. I work at a local community bank. I served in the legislature for 8 years, and I'll talk about that a little bit. I've got 3 children and love the community and just felt I needed to get back in the game. So I was a legislator for 8 years until 2018, chose not to run just because of the time commitments outside of the city. I just felt I needed to get back in the game, and I missed it. I missed serving the people. I missed the debates, and feel I have, with that experience, I sat on House Appropriations Committee, which dealt with the budgets, worked with a lot of the city department heads, city managers at the time, some of the council members as well during those times. So I understand the budget process very well. It's probably my biggest strength. The relationships I have with the legislature, I think legislators and various leadership down there, I think would be very helpful for the city going forward. We're in a tough spot right now. We all know that from a state perspective, a city budget perspective. Everybody's budgets are going to be really tight. I don't think we've seen the real pain that's coming once summer hits here, and the oil industry is very challenged right now. It's a key driver to our economy. So working with all those different entities and business owners, we need to make Minot a better place, a more business-friendly place. I think it's okay, but we need a lot more work there. And as far as the budget, I mean, it's a big budget. Obviously, we got flood protection money that needs to be deployed. We got water, property taxes cannot keep going up. That's just a killer to the community and the business community, to the residents. So I think with that, my experience, my business experience, the leadership positions that I've had inside the company I work for and the legislature, I think I could bring that to bear and help propel this city forward. So I just appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Roscoe. Appreciate all the candidates again tonight for coming out, for joining us. We do have already about 8 or 9 good questions we want to get to, so let's get hopping on those. This one is a broad one, but it's kind of a softball. Hopefully you're prepared already. What does the city do well, and what would you look to change or look to improve? We'll start with Carrie first.
Well, I think the city does a lot of things well. I don't think I would have made the decision to stay here and make my life here if I didn't think it was doing well. One of the things I have loved to see change since when I grew up was the efforts at downtown revitalization. I actually feel like downtown is someplace you can, sort of hang out. When I was in high school, like literally you just went there to party in somebody's apartment upstairs. There really wasn't much of a restaurant or night scene, and it's really nice to have that place. I think the greatest quality of Minot is our resiliency. The city has been knocked down many times in its history, and every time we've got back up, and that's because of the people. we are able to, in times of crisis, come together, put aside personal differences, political differences, and get the work done, whether that's, building a dike to protect, City Hall and the dispatch center, or, helping residents whose apartment building has been burned down. We are an amazing group of people. We can always do things better. One of the things I would like to see improve is how we run our city government. Like I said, we have reached out to over 12,000 voters, and we are hearing tremendous frustration with current leadership and people feeling like they cannot participate in city government. So I think we can do better. I think, we elect leaders to represent us, but there is also a place for the residents of Minot to have a true and genuine voice within our city government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Steve, you are next. Again, the question, what does the city do well, and what would you change or look to improve?
That I think the city does a lot of things very well. I think one of the things I notice as I go from neighborhood to neighborhood, again, the price of my nose, is seeing how much pride people take in their homes. Sometimes even in the most modest neighborhoods, you can tell people put a lot of effort into it. They plan things, they tidy up, and I'm really impressed by that. It isn't just in the fancy neighborhoods with the big homes, it's in the trailer parks. A lot of people seem to take pride in their community and how it looks. One of the other things I think is that the community is very resilient. We've gone through a flood, we're going through a pandemic now, we've gone through crashes before in the oil industry, and I think we bounce back every time. I think we have a strong workforce. I think when you talk about the city, specifically the city government, we have a lot of hardworking employees who really contribute, who really scrimp and save, who try to do the best they can. And I think in government also we've achieved a lot of efficiencies in the past 3 or 4 years. We have new data systems that give us information about how we're doing, how streets are wearing or not wearing, how equipment needs to be replaced. We're really starting to move forward. One city employee referred to it as coming from the Stone Age, Flintstones age to the Jetsons age. So there are a lot of these internal things that you might not see if you're not familiar with what goes on day to day. I wouldn't have stayed here all these years if I didn't see a sense of hope and I didn't see that sense of commitment. In terms of change, I think one of the problems has been leadership. I think people have often felt excluded. Even those of us on the city council, we find out that there have been things going on that we were never informed of. So that's an issue. I think accountability, both in terms of city employees and leaders, accountability for results. One of the other things is I think that people have been excluded from being able to speak, and I think that's a real problem. And I think we need to be realistic. I think that's one of the other concerns. There's no free lunch. If you want services, if you want good roads, if you want good police and fire protection, there's a price to be paid for that. And I think sometimes people wish that they could have everything or a lot of things without having to pay for them. If in 10 years the cost of living goes up 20% and your budget goes up 10%, there's a problem. And that's caught up with us. And I think we have to be realistic about those kinds of financing issues.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Tom, you are next.
Pretty much like they say the church isn't a building, the church are the people. I think that holds true for the city. The city is not a building, the city of the people. And the people are what, not to sound cliche, but the people are what bring the magic. I can remember back the flood of '69 and watching my dad build dikes along the Souris River, tirelessly, around the clock, working hard to save the city. And that work ethic holds true today. I see it when I volunteer. The people are good, and the people of Minot, they have so much to give. And I think that's what the city does good. Now, on the flip side, I really believe where we need to improve is we need to open back up and listen to the people. We need to believe in the people. The people are who are going to put us on those seats. They have a lot to say, and they need to be heard. They need to be listened to. those are the things that I believe in.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Roscoe?
Thanks for the question. I guess I see us as we're a big, small town, basically. Everybody knows everybody for the most part, which is one of my favorite things about the city. Maybe we know too much about each other sometimes, but I think it's a great thing that we have going on here. I still go back to the business. I mean, we need business. The business community needs to be strong for this city to prosper, I think. And I just don't think we're the most business friendly. We're not the easiest to work with, in my opinion. Just with my interactions with customers that deal, in construction or whatnot. I mean, there's just some areas there I think we need to streamline and eliminate some regulations and ordinances, quite frankly. I mean, so I would say that's some improvements we could do. What we're doing well, I think what we've done well for years is the flood protection projects and the water projects. Those have been managed very well, I think. So that's obviously they're expensive. They're a lot of money. Partnering with the state there, the state pays the lion's share of those projects, and will hopefully continue to do that in the future. And that's where, I'd use my relationships there to try to help bridge that gap. We had to cancel the one wall. I get that because we got to cut our budgets back. I'm as conservative gets, and that was a smart decision, I think, at this time. But we definitely need to continue and finish that project the best way we can. We're not going to be able to finish it all in one time, unfortunately, in a five-year window. I think we should be bonding for some of that. Interest rates are all-time lows. We should be bonding for some of this stuff, and we are. But we should probably accelerate that at a state and a city level. The messaging that comes from the city and the business community partnership, I think, is broken. We've got the chamber, the CVB, we've got MADC, we've got a city staff doing economic development. I think it all needs to be one, quite frankly. One management, one team, one voice, one message to the outside world that we're open for business and we want your businesses to locate here. Thanks.
Thank you, Roscoe. And to end us on this question, Scott.
So the great thing about going last is I can listen to all these answers and then pick off the ones I think are the best. But initially, unquestionably, one of the great things about Minot is our downtown. I was walking around a while back before COVID hit and enjoying one of those early spring days and realized how much has changed in the last 5 years downtown. Between new businesses that have popped up and those that will be popping up soon, between nightclubs, coffee shops, all my favorite places. I spend a significant amount of my fun time downtown, and it's just fantastic. And I think that's extraordinarily important because as we make Minot appealing to businesses and to people, having a destination like that is extraordinarily important. So I think that's one of the fantastic things that's happening in Minot right now. I think something that we have to do better at is community engagement, and I think a few others have touched on this a little bit. As I've talked to people from various economic backgrounds, people from, people that just moved to town and people that have lived here forever, I hear often that they don't feel like their voice is being heard. And we've made some good strides in the last few years. I think Derek Hackett's done a fantastic job with helping us get these type meetings available online so you don't have to show up at Monday at 5:30 and sit in these chairs in order to participate. But I think there's a lot more things we can do. Our city website needs to be updated. It needs to be easier to access information as it was talked about earlier. It shouldn't be difficult to find information, to fill out forms. Perhaps one thing that comes on the other side of COVID is the fact that we can learn that we can do a lot of things online that maybe we couldn't do before. So I just think that we need to modernize. We need to create more opportunities and be very deliberate with more doors for input and really encourage people that aren't currently participating, people that don't know everybody, to really get engaged in this system. So.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Okay, for this question, let's keep our responses to less than a minute. We do have a lot of good questions, and understandably, let's just speed it along a little bit. Okay, so Steve, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the size of the city council? We're talking Goldilocks here, so is it too big, too small, just right? And then would you change anything? So again, what are your thoughts on the size of the city council, and would you change anything?
I think 7 is a good number. I was on when there were 15, and that was way too many. I think it's not so much the number, but the kind of people who are there and how much effort they put into it. For me, it's about 2.5 days a week. That's the amount of time you have to spend figuring out what's going on, listening to people, going to meetings, being out in the field with city crews and with city people. So it's not so much the number, but it's the amount of dedication the members put in and the working team that they're able to form. And I think lately that's been a pretty good one.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Tom, you're next.
I was never in favor of cutting down the city council. My belief is you have more eyes looking at an issue or a problem, you have more opportunities for solutions. One of the reasons or one of the arguments to cut down city council and cut it in half was to help save money. Well, they cut the city council in half, but then they doubled their salary. Just doesn't make sense to me. I like having a little bit more neighbor representation. I like seeing my alderman walking up the street on a nightly basis. I like that. And is 15 too big? But I think 7 is too small.
Okay. Roscoe, you're next.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's about right. I mean, you could always add a couple more, I suppose, but you get anything over 10, you're spinning circles. There's too many, you get too much input then. And the legislative committee I sat on had 7 people, and it was good. It worked well, the subsection of it, because you can talk it out and make decisions quick. I think one of the biggest flaws of the current council is they don't make decisions. I mean, if they do, it takes forever, or there's an outside consultant hired to help make decision. Just make the decision. You're hired to make the decision. So that's where I guess I struggle, whether it's recycling, a building, City Hall building, the Blue on Broadway, all of these are community development block grant stuff. It just seems like it's always pushed off. So if you added more, I think you'd probably have a bigger problem with the current makeup and making tough decisions and not outsourcing them. That just drives me nuts, I guess.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the quick responses. Scott, you're next.
I look back at the previous elections prior to us kind of redoing Minot, and I noticed quite a few elections where people ran unopposed. The nice thing is there's five of us right now running for 3 spots, and the voters get to decide who they're going to pick. That doesn't happen when we have a mayor running unopposed and numerous council members running unopposed. The point of this was to encourage better participation so that we have to get out and earn your vote, and so that we have to engage with you. If you don't like the job the city council is doing, elect somebody else. I think that's perfectly fair, but I don't think that just adding more people onto city council is necessarily the answer.
Okay, and Carrie, you get to close us on what are your thoughts on the size of city council question?
Well, 14 was ridiculous. I mean, Baltimore is a city of almost 700,000, and we had 14 city council members. It was way too many for a city this size. Is 7 the magic number? Don't know. As Mr. Padragula said, I mean, I think to be a good council member, you have to put in a lot of hours. I talked to current council, and 20 to 30 hours a week is not unheard of. And so what that gets us, though, the problem is a self-selected group of people to run for these offices, because it is a part-time position, so we can't, make this our full-time occupation, is that we all have to have the kinds of jobs or be independently wealthy that will allow us to commit that kind of time to council. I think in the future we may have to, now that we're smaller, consider potentially making our council a full-time council, particularly if we're going to have changes with city managers and their roles and responsibilities. It's something we're going to have to take into consideration about what we expect of our smaller number on the council.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Let's move on to the next question. We'll keep these on the 1-minute schedule. I like that feel a little bit. Let's move through them, right? Okay, Tom, you'll start us off. What are your thoughts about overcrowding at City Hall and a proposed new facility that is being paid, at least in part, by federal grant money through the National Disaster Resilience Program?
I think with that, the current time, I believe a new city hall is not a priority. I think we have bigger fish to fry, so to speak. Overcrowding, from what I understand, may not be such an issue in a couple years. And I think we need to take a hard look at the current where we currently have City Hall, if we can expand anywhere in the current location. But I don't feel at this point spending the amount of money we're going to spend just to get $3.5 million from the federal government is the right move at this time.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Roscoe, you're next.
Thank you. I completely agree. I would not vote, period, to build a building, rent a building, lease a building, buy a building. I just think it's the wrong time. And we've learned a lot of things in private business, and I think government has too over these last 2 months, where you can work remotely. So we should look into, maybe there's a lot of positions we could shift to remote homework. That's something I think that should be looked at. But that kind of money, unless it's 100% paid, that would be the only area where I'd even consider looking at it. It's just not a priority to anybody I talk to. That might be for some employees. I get that. There's an auditorium that's got space. You know, if we needed to do a small renovation to add a few offices there, I mean, that's an option. There's out at Public Works, there's space. I mean, there's other options. I just don't think spending $15–20 million on a building makes any sense in this economic environment.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott, you are next. Your thoughts about overcrowding at City Hall and a new facility.
Something that was said earlier is that sometimes we have to let the city council make a decision and move on. The city council did vote to move forward with it, and at some point we've got to quit kicking the can around. The reality is I have toured this building, I have talked to city staff, I have saw the working conditions, and it's not conducive with a healthy, productive work environment. The long-term costs of that are going to be significant for the city. Is it perhaps hard to swallow the fact that right now we want to build a city hall or move into a different city hall? Absolutely. Is it the right time for it? Absolutely not. But that being said, we do have the opportunity right now to secure some federal dollars. I believe we need to work with our federal funders in order to gain a little bit of flexibility in that. But I do think that, you know, doing it further in the future is going to cost more money, and that's not the way to go.
Okay, and to finish us off, nope, sorry, two more. Carrie, would you please go on thoughts about overcrowding at City Hall and the new facility?
So according to both external and internal reports, the city needs more office space. The current plan, of course, is to buy the old Wells Fargo building. This space appears to meet the identified needs, including moving the 911 dispatch center. Well, I agree the city needs to devise a solution to the lack of office space and keeping our 911 dispatch center safe from a flood. I would approach our solution cautiously. There is still too much unknown about the impact of COVID-19 on Minot's economy, and until we get an accurate assessment of this, we should be holding off on a big expenditure like this.
Okay, Steve, you get to finish us on this question.
I was one of the 3 aldermen who voted against it, and not because I don't think we need more space. This is not a good time for it. We have still 2 more years at least if we want to take advantage of the federal funds, which would pay for the vast majority actually, of the old Northwest Bank building. I think the issue isn't so much space, but how we look at City Hall. Do we look at it as a building or a set of activities and functions? A lot of the activities and functions can be done online by citizens doing their business more efficiently with the city and by workers working from home. So I think we need to think about it differently. In terms of the file cabinets and the records, those can be digitized. We shouldn't have to build space for file cabinets that are obsolete by now.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Let's keep moving then. Roscoe, this question will start with you. Minot received millions, just over $74 million in a national competition, the National Disaster Resiliency Competition. In your view, what, right or wrong, has been tied in with the expenditure of these funds, whether it's something that has been already used or projected to be used for these funds? What's gone well with this? What has gone poorly with these dollars?
Well, I think a lot of it's been poorly done, and I think it starts right at the top. I would remove the director of that. That would be one of the first motions I'd make on City Council. I think it's a wrong person for the job. It's been that way from day one. So I'd start there. Start with a fresh slate on that. The flood pieces that they're looking at doing, the buyouts, I think that's smart uses of the funds. But if we're just inventing things, trying to find ways to spend the money, return some of the money. Just because you got that money doesn't mean that you have to spend 100% of it. If there's not a need or an identified area, return that portion of it. But just spending money to spend money just doesn't make sense because it's quote free. But the flood pieces to that I think is important. I think if Minot State could have a small presence downtown for one of their divisions and we could use that funds for that would be something I think we should look into too.
Okay, Scott, we'll go with you next.
I agree. I think that there's been a huge amount of the rollout of it and the implementation of it that's been extraordinarily problematic. I think that a whole lot needs to change about that, including I wish we could go back in time and roll it out from the beginning and be much more clear with the public about what the intentions were of it and all of that. But unless I develop a time machine, we have to look forward. And the reality is there is some stuff. Obviously, yes, flood control. Every single dime that we can use from that in order to make this community more resilient through flood control, we should do. Furthermore, I am really excited about the Career and Technical Center that's being planned for downtown, or for within the community and hopefully downtown. If we're learning anything right now, is we're going to have to train different workers to work differently. We have a shortage of nursing, IT folks, welders, different folks like that. Minot doesn't have that, and that is a weakness in this community, and if we can use this money to stimulate that, we need to do that.
Okay, Carrie, you are next. How has, in your view, what has gone right or wrong about the expenditure of the NDR fund?
So I'm not a Monday morning quarterback. I am not going to sit here and say everything that was done wrong. It's done. What we can do is be more strategic moving forward. We have till September 22. That's not a long time away. It seems like a long time away. It's not. Most of the funds are committed to everything we see going on around the city. We maybe have enough money for one or two more initiatives. You know, the CTE, the Center for Technical Excellence, is probably one of the best kept secrets about the NDRP program. And it is an amazing example of collaboration between city and business and higher education in training a workforce. So we can't stop or change what's been done in the past, but we certainly can figure out until September of 22 the funds that are left and how to use those in the best way possible moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Steve, you are next.
I think the big problem is that circumstances have changed dramatically in the past 5 to 7 years since the grant was written. The other part of the problem is that the federal government is incredibly rigid in terms of their rules. What were good ideas, what were needed by the community, and a large group of people were involved in writing the grant back 7 years ago aren't needed as much now. What's worked is getting people out of harm's way. What's worked is helping people afford new houses out of the floodplain. What's worked is getting some better management tools. I think the effort was well intended, but things have changed dramatically. We need to have some more housing for vulnerable populations. The thing that's most exciting, I think most important for me, is the Center for Technical Education. I have a PhD. We don't need more people with PhDs, respectfully. We need more people who can build things, who can fix things, who can solve problems. And vocational training has been a shortage, has been a shortcoming of this state and this community. And that's something I think we really need to push.
Okay, thank you. Tom, you get to finish us on this question.
It was a wonderful gift to the community. I mean, I don't want to echo everything that everybody has said, but times have changed. And we can't just spend money to spend money. There's absolutely nothing wrong with giving money back to the federal government. To do a project, one project, for instance, I mean, moving City Hall to get it out of the flood's way. We have a $1 billion flood project going on. If that $1 billion flood project can't protect City Hall right now, then what are we doing? So I really believe, I mean, yes, we are the flood protection. That's a great project. It's wonderful use of funds, but we've got to bring the people of the city of Minot into this process to use these funds, and we've got plenty of time. We've got plenty of time to get these projects completed.
Okay, thank you. Again, for those who are watching live, if you have questions, if you want to, please keep submitting those through Facebook, through YouTube. we will collect them and make sure we get those addressed. One more question for the whole group, and then we're going to do a lightning round here in just a minute. So I know the candidates are super excited about that. This one, I think we come back to the beginning, right? Roscoe, we started with you last, so we'll come back to you, Scott, to start this one. This question comes from a viewer. How would each of you restore the trust that has been lost in the council based on recent mishandling of the city manager situation, parking garages, among other things? How would each of you restore the trust that has been lost in the city council?
No question, that's going to be a concern. It's not going to happen quick. There's no quick answer that I can throw out right now and soothe all the problems that have happened. The reality is there's only a couple of things that we can do. We can be more transparent. We can be more honest, even if we're sharing bad information. We can admit when we're wrong. We can make decisions and stick to decisions. And I think that we can move forward by just doing everything we can to tell the story of Minot and to rebuild that trust one voter at a time.
Okay, Carrie, you're next.
So I'm going to stick to the city manager hiring process. There's two things I think the city council can and should do differently in this hiring process. One, this process should be open to the public. In the past, it has been not subject to the open meetings law, and I think that's wrong. I'm not saying the public gets to come and, ask 1,000 questions. It is a job interview. But this committee should be comprised of any of the 7 members of council who are willing and able. It should be comprised of some department heads, and it should have at least 3 rank and file city employees on that committee. And the public should be able to observe all of those sessions with the potential candidates for this very important position, except when that committee needs to go into executive session. And this is transparency. This is the work that we do for you, and you should be able to see it. This hiring process should not be secret. And second, I will not support in any city employment contract a golden parachute clause that provides for any kind of severance for terminated employees. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Steve, you are next.
Don't mean to sound defensive, but I was not on the council when we took the parking ramp decision. I think that was one of the worst decisions that was ever made, but my hands are clean on that one. I agree. I think there is an issue of accountability, and there is an issue of lack of confidence, or limited confidence, put it that way. And I think the first step in restoring confidence is coming clean, is admitting when we made a mistake, we made a mistake. I think the second thing we need to do is we need a good lawyer. We need to craft an employment agreement that really does make sense. I think the third thing is that when we're responsible, when we're supervising a city employee, we have to keep at arm's length from that employee. There needs to be a greater sensitivity to boundary issues, to multiple relationships, and potential conflicts of interest. I hate to say this, but the hiring process was open in the past. It was treated as an open thing. It needs to be made more open, probably be broadcast, and there probably should be a community forum for applicants to come in and make their pitch, if you will. But I think it is going to take work. It is going to take a lot of small decisions and a lot of openness, and that's something, again, I've fought for over 20 years.
Okay, Tom, you are next. How would you restore, or how would each of you as councilmen or women restore the trust that has been lost in the council?
Going out and asking for 300-plus signatures and campaigning for a spot on the city council, you listen a lot. And I would say 80% of the comments have to deal with this question. People have lost trust in the city of Minot. It's embarrassing. Sometimes when you burn a bridge, you have to get a new contractor to rebuild that bridge. And going forward, we need to bring the people back into the process, and we need to hold the people accountable who burned that bridge. We need to hold them accountable for their actions or inactions.
Okay, Roscoe, we're going to finish this question with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's said. Accountability, transparency, I mean, those are buzzwords, but they're easy words. I mean, just be straightforward, blunt, honest, except when you make a mistake, make a bad decision, just own up to it. And I think there's some that have done that, don't get me wrong. I would, however, eliminate the exec committee. I'm not sure we got 7 council members. What do we need an executive committee for? So you got a committee or you got a council inside the council? I mean, that's a big problem to me, I think, too. So there's a few easy things like that I think do right off the bat, and just listening to the people as opposed to the bureaucrats. I mean, that usually works. But it's an uphill battle. There's definitely an uphill battle. I hear it all the time, just like Mr. Ross said.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Okay, we're going to move in now to a quick lightning round. We're looking now for the candidates to answer just with a thumbs up, yes, I approve, or yes, I agree, or a thumbs down, nope, not right, don't agree. So these questions are just going to move on kind of fast. We're probably not going to sit on a lot of these questions for very long, just looking to get some quick opinions. So all 5 of you, answer with a thumbs up or thumbs down. Do you approve of the outcome of the recent firing of the city manager? Okay, all 5 were thumbs up. For those who maybe can or can't see this on Facebook, all 5 approve of the outcome of the recent firing of the city manager. Second question, is the city's budget for road or street infrastructure repairs and adequate? Is the city's budget for road or street infrastructure adequate? Yes, I approve, it's adequate, or no, I do not approve. And we got 5 who say not adequate, not an adequate budget for road or street infrastructure. Okay, third question. Did the city council make the right decision 8 years ago in starting the current plan of flood protection projects within the city and the region? Did the city council make the right decision 8 years ago in starting the current plan of flood protection projects within the city and the region? Thumbs up, yes, you approve of that decision, or no, you do not approve. Okay, we've got Burlingame and Evans and Striley who said yes, they approve of that decision. Steve Padregula, Tom Ross said no, they do not approve of that decision. And then the last question that we want to cover for the lightning round, do you approve of the current direction for city recycling efforts? And I'm just going to remind the candidates, I'd like you to actually answer the question both pre-COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. So obviously the world changes a little bit, and that direction for city recycling efforts that we're talking about is one collection every 2 weeks in lieu of a garbage collection, and it would come from a large bin that everyone would have. You would have a chance once to opt out of that. So again, pre-COVID-19, do you approve of the current direction for city recycling efforts? Okay, so we have Burlingame, Evans, and Padregula say yes, I approve. Ross and Striley say no. Now, post-COVID-19, do you approve of the direction for city recycling efforts? And Burlingame and Padregula changed to no. So Carrie Evans is the lone candidate out of 5 who says that she approves of the current direction for city recycling efforts post-COVID-19. Okay, we move through those fast. I appreciate the candidates working on some topics like that with me. I really do appreciate that. We'll come back to flood protection projects and that question later on. I think I've got 1 or 2 more that have already been submitted. We want to move on to another question that was submitted by a viewer. We'll start with Carrie on this one. I think it's your turn. And we're under the 1 minute time limit, I think, still. I think we're moving okay on those. Carrie, start us off here. What is the biggest obstacle the city faces right now? What is the biggest obstacle the city faces right now?
Without a doubt, in gaining the trust back of the people of Minot. I am shocked at the level of frustration and anger and distrust our citizens have in our city government. If we can't fix this, it is going to lead to disengagement. It is going to lead to people feeling like this is not the community for them and their families and leaving. We have to fix this. And we have to fix our relationship with our city employees as well. So there's a lot of fixing to do. I think, the 5 of us up here are all very capable and competent to do that, but it has to be a top priority for the leadership of the city to win back the residents of the city.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Steve, you're next.
I think there are really 2 things, trust and money. People need to feel a part of the process. People need to feel like their opinions are heard and respected. Unfortunately, a lot of what people want costs money, and you can't have it both ways. You can't have low taxes and good roads. We're falling behind. Even though we triple the amount on street maintenance, we're still falling behind. So there has to be an attitude of reality here, and that's part of where the trust comes in, where city leadership needs to be open about what the challenges are, and the people need to be honest and respectful of the fact you can't get everything all at once. There has to be more of a dialogue. There has to be more of an acceptance of what the realities are, and then a shared process of deciding on priorities.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Tom, what is the biggest obstacle the city faces right now?
I'll repeat it. I'll repeat it. I'll say trust. You know, it's supposed to be a government of the people. That was taken away. And that's how people honestly believe that. They don't believe they have a say. They don't believe that government is accessible. That aside. But also, you know, where's our money going to come from? What are we going to do to bring in money that we're going to be hit big here? And that's another huge obstacle. So, you know, they go hand in hand. We got to bring the people in to help us solve that problem.
Okay, Roscoe, you're next.
Yeah, obviously trust, but I'll focus on taxes and the budget, because it's going to get hit, like Tom said. It's probably a little more delayed. I would say by July, August, we'll have a better understanding when the new council is set. We're going to have a better understanding where it's at, but the budget's going to be, I think, a lion's share of what the work's going to be over the next year on that, and taxes. I mean, we can't raise taxes. I'm just adamant at that right now. We're at a higher level than I'd like us to be. Obviously, we've got road work to do. That I think should be one of the top priorities is infrastructure. So yes, building the trust, and you can build trust by talking and listening, and that's what I'd intend to do.
Okay, Scott, I think you're the last one on this question. What is the biggest obstacle the city faces right now?
I think a lot of what was said here, trust, especially trust in budgeting. So I'm going to throw those two together. I think that the reality is, as everybody said here, we've been kicking the can down the road on a few things, and the long-term cost of that is going to be extensive. I saw a report where normally road maintenance plans are every 5 years, and we're on an every 17-year plan. And if you drive around this community, you can see that. We cannot continue to kick that down, but we cannot and absolutely cannot increase taxes. So we need to be innovative and creative in how we do stuff. We need to work with our legislature in order to take advantage of the legacy fund in order to get some low-interest loans as well as perhaps some grants. There's a huge amount of stuff that we have to do to be creative, but we will not build trust unless we can do better with our budget.
Okay, I mentioned that we would go back to a flood protection question, and we have a question that we want to cover on that. So by my last count, I think we're in the neighborhood of $250 to $300 million have been expended towards a $1 billion, or allocated at least, towards a $1 billion region-wide flood protection project. We're going to start with you, Steve. What changes would you make, if any, to the current flood protection direction for the city? And if you think everything is fine, what would you do to make sure there are no changes going forward?
I don't think any community can absorb the kind, or keep absorbing the kind of disasters we've had and we've resiliently overcome. At some point, you just can't do it anymore. So I think we obviously need flood control, but I think what we needed to have been, and we need to now, is be realistic about it. The city has overpromised. The city has overpromised, especially to our rural neighbors. We promised that we would pay the bulk of NAWS to bring water into the city, which we need, and the region. We promised we'd pay the bulk of flood protection, which protects the whole valley. If you benefit from these projects, you need to pay your fair share. And I understand it may not be a lot of money from some of the outlying areas, but if you benefit, you need to contribute to it. And I think we've pretended, or else not realized in terms of budgeting, how much these things would really cost, how long they would take. And I'm glad the city's been generous, but I think it's been too generous, and it's time other people pay part of their fair share. We also need to be realistic about how long it's going to take. It's got to be done, but I think we need to step back a little bit and be realistic about it and make sure everybody contributes.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Repeat the question.
Sure. What changes would you make, if any, to the current flood protection direction for the city? If you wouldn't make any changes, how would you make sure that the current path continues forward?
Yeah, I mean, we're on the path, we're well within it. It's kind of hard to change the track, the direction of where we're going. So there's not much I would change. One thing that I would do, though, is I would really emphasize management of the basin from top to bottom. And that's, I guess, if there's one thing that I think that can help us in the future is management of the Souris River Basin.
Okay, Roscoe, you're next.
Well, as one who was at the legislature and sat on the committees and helped get this money to Minot at a very good cost share, the legislature has stepped up for us, which is good. Can they step up more next session? Potentially. The oil revenue is going to be down, which is directly tied to water, the Water Resource Trust Fund. Borrowing rates, as everybody knows, historic lows. If we wanted to accelerate certain phases of these, we should be looking at long-term financing options, both from a state perspective and a local perspective, through the various funds that are available through the state. As far as the Ward County Commission, what has Ward County Commissioners done for the flood protection project? Virtually nothing. I think that's not right. I think the half of a point that's on the ballot this time, that at least half of that should be dedicated to the flood protection project. In fact, I would maybe say 40% of that, 60% of that should be for a set number of years. I think we need to re-engage them. We're the biggest city in the county. I think that needs to be a priority too. As far as paying their fair share, I just don't think they have.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott, you're next.
I mentioned earlier working hard with the legislature to take advantage of the legacy fund. I can't think of anything that creates a better legacy for our city than long-term flood control. We cannot change the flood control. We have to move forward with it using all the different creative things that have been talked about here as quickly as possible. It's going to have a massive, massive impact on this community. When flood insurance prices start going up, it's going to drive home values down. We cannot do that. The economic impact of that is too serious to be messing around with. We have to be as aggressive as possible. I do think that once NAS is paid for in a few years, redirecting that percentage of the sales tax towards flood control is of value. I agree with Roscoe. I think engaging other local governments a little bit in order to pay them, to get them to pay a little bit more, I think that's fabulous. There's a lot of different taxing entities, and we all have to be engaged.
Okay, and Carrie, I think you're the last one on this question.
So before I answer, I want to our viewers out there, NAS, I know acronyms are being thrown around, is the water project that is taking water from Lake Sakakawea, filtering it through Max and bringing it to Minot to help augment our water supply and those communities we supply water to. So if you're out there like, what the heck is this NAS they keep on talking about? That's what it is. I had to learn a lot about that. I wouldn't change anything. I think Mr. Ross is right. We're sort of, the train has left the station. One thing that concerns me in the long run, however, is even if when we get through MI5, the final stage of completion, only 60% of Minot will be covered from flood protection. That leaves 40% of our community. Nothing south of the river and the whole east side has not been touched. And I think that is going to be something that we have to address and come up with solutions for as a council, and funding opportunities and those kinds of things. So I would just keep the train on the tracks for the current projects and keep an eye to the future on additional protections that we need for our community.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Thank you, candidates. Keep those questions coming. We've got about 7 or 8 in the queue here, and we're going to keep them going. This one, what is the best or most positive achievement the City Council has as a feather in their cap over the last 3 or 4 years? Tom, we'll go with you first. What's the best or most positive achievement by the council?
Can I pass on this one? No, tongue-in-cheek comment there. It would have to be the work on flood control. That was thrown on us, they've worked hard, and short answer to your question is flood control.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Roscoe.
Yeah, I agree. The flood control and the water projects, the work of Dan Jonason's department. That's been very good. I mean, there's a lot of activity. We need the economic activity, so it's a double win for us. We get the flood protection plus the economic activity that comes from that. So I think that's been a positive, and I think removing the city manager was another positive.
Okay, Scott, next for you.
I think the use of some of the Magic Fund dollars in order to create low-interest loans for aspiring entrepreneurs so that new businesses can come into our community, that's where a lot of the magic happens. The people that really should be solving a lot of our communities are our local business owners, and being able to use those city funds to kind of create opportunities is fantastic, and I think that's extraordinarily important.
Okay, Carrie.
Two things. The Center for Technical Education, that has been sort of the brainchild of Alderwoman Olson, and we're almost there. We're, ready to go on this. And this is, to me, a huge deal. We're the only major city in North Dakota that does not have a CTE. And I think council, and particularly Alderwoman Olson, has really kept her eyes on the prize and been able to move us forward in a way so we can have that up and running. And second, using a lot of our NDR dollars for important housing programs for some of our more vulnerable parts of the communities, seniors, disabled folks. I think affordable housing is an issue that some of us don't, particularly if you lived in your homes for a long time and, bought it when it was $60,000. We don't pay attention to that. And so I'm proud of our council for trying to protect the most vulnerable among us.
Okay, and then we'll finish the question. Steve Padragula, what's the best or most positive achievement by the council in the last 3 or 4 years?
Well, I think there have been two. I think the most positive one was that only in the past 2 years have really sat back and looked at where the city is going and looked at our priorities. We've never had any planning sessions before. This has driven me absolutely nuts. I've never been involved in any organization, church, arts group, whatever, where people don't sit down periodically, step back and look at where they are and where they want to be. And the start of a planning process, and now some software tools that help us get numbers and do financial forecasting, I think has been absolutely critical. Because if you don't know what your values are, if you don't know what your goals are, if you've not talked about your vision, how are you ever going to get anywhere? So I think that's maybe kind of a strange one, because I agree, floods and the other things are important, flood protection. But if you have no idea of where you're going, it's a lost cause, and we finally started doing that.
Okay, thank you. Let's keep moving along with another question. Almost every candidate has mentioned something about a tough budget or dollars are going to be hard to come by, and I think that's going to be true for a lot of different individuals and entities. So this question goes to that, and Roscoe, we'll start with you. What specific cuts are you willing to make and not willing to make? So what, again, from a budget standpoint, what cuts are you willing to make and what cuts are you not willing to make?
Not willing to make infrastructure. I mean, that's critical. We need the infrastructure. We need the roads. We need to continue with the water projects, flood projects, which we've talked about extensively. I think that's a must. There's only a few things that government does well, I think really well, and it's in their wheelhouse what they should be focused on, and that's infrastructure. Without infrastructure, you just don't have the development that you need. Cuts. I wouldn't do the building project. That's obviously some of that's going to be local money too. I think the head count has to be looked at. Maybe some retirement packages, remote work for some, like I mentioned. Maybe you need less staff. That's something we need to look at. That's always that's a hard one, but we need to look at that, I think. And any talk of affordable housing, the private sector does housing, not the government. So I would not support any money going to any quote affordable housing type stuff, because there's plenty of private business owners that have empty buildings, empty apartments, and those should be our priority, not spending money to hurt their businesses, which is what we're doing with the NDR money.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott?
I think that any new projects that haven't started yet, with the exception of infrastructure things that we can push off, is extraordinarily important, and the city council began to do that already as much as possible. I think a hiring freeze for employees right now, that as employees naturally kind of leave their job, the longer we can leave those positions open, we could potentially bank up some dollars. I think that we can talk to our department heads and give them the opportunities to be flexible. It's kind of silly to me that we expect part-time people to tell extremely qualified professionals how they can best run their areas, so we can listen a little bit more. I agree, we cannot push down the road any more infrastructure, whether it be flood control or the road, sewer, and water projects, so.
Okay, Carrie, you are next.
I've actually thought of this question. There's four things. One is what Mr. Burlingame said, is reviewing our new unfunded projects. I think we can start there, especially those that involve local funding. Second, exploring opportunities to increase our funding on state match programs. Four, increasing our collaboration with private businesses to stretch our city dollars further. Again, I think the CTE is a great example of that, partnering with Trinity in, each of those entities providing a piece to the puzzle for a product that's going to help Minot. And third, not exploring filling temporarily open jobs for the city. The one thing I will never do and I will not support is any effort that seeks to close budget deficiencies that involves cutting or freezing guaranteed pay increases or benefits to our city employees.
Okay, Steve, what specific cuts are you willing to make or not willing to make?
Well, I've already done a lot of these. Gathering space, pulled the plug on that. City Hall, voted against that. Retaining wall around City Hall, voted against that. Recycling facilities been put off. I think looking forward, the things that really have some cost potentials are freezing staff. And also, I think we need not to commit to any new long-range, long-term projects, with one exception, that being the North Side Fire Station. We've needed that for over 25 years. That's something I'm willing to invest in. We also need to look at working more efficiently, working smarter, not working harder so much. Again, better data systems so we understand where systems are going to fail and can invest in them and pull the plug on them when they're no longer being effective. I think that's the key issue. It isn't so much, sometimes you have to invest, let me put it this way, sometimes you have to invest a little bit to save a lot of money. And that's what we need to be thinking of, not just where do we cut, but how do we make creative expenditures? How do we maximize the money that we do have and its effect?
Okay, thank you, Steve. Last on this question, Tom, what specific cuts are you willing to make in the budget and what are you not willing to cut?
I'm not willing to cut infrastructure or public safety. I'll just say that flat out. Those two are none. Cuts, non-essential construction projects. And when I say cut, if they're, most of them eventually will be needed, so we can put a delay on those. But to get us through this, to get us through where we need to get, we need to prioritize. And right now there are some projects that can be and should be put off.
Okay, thank you. Let's keep moving on to the next question. We've got about 20 or 25 minutes left. So again, if anyone is watching live and would like to submit any more questions, I'm down to about 4 or 5, which I think will probably take us to the very end of our forum tonight. But we'll go to question. This next question, we'll start with Scott. Scott, the question that has been posed is, how does each candidate view the hierarchy of the city staff? So we have department heads who report to a city manager. We have a mayor, obviously, with the city council members. Do you like the way that it's set up currently? Do you not like it? What would you change?
I think that the city manager fiasco that we just went through shows that we probably need to reevaluate that system. I think unquestionably the human resources director needs a little bit more freedom within her job. I think that the city attorney and the city finance director need to have autonomy from a city manager. And I think that there's just a lot of different ways. I would like to see, as we begin to redo how we do government, is to really work on creating bottom-up accountability plans, 360 evaluations, and I'll get the opportunity to make sure I say right now too, I will never agree to a long-term contract for any city employee, and I will never agree to a golden parachute for any city employee.
Okay, Carrie, you are next.
So actually, a voter reached out to me yesterday on Facebook with this question. And while I think there's different ways you can structure city government, his suggestion was vesting all of the responsibilities currently in the city manager into the department heads. While I'm not opposed to that, that is certainly something I do not think should come from the 7 members of council. I would approach that in great depth with the current department heads. Why that works, why it doesn't work, how would you, if we did that, how would you incorporate those city manager responsibilities into your positions? Is it even something our city department heads think is a good idea? And listen very strongly to them. If they could not come to the council with a consensus for changing the hierarchy we have of our city government, I would not go against and thrust something upon them that the 7 of us think.
How do you view the hierarchy of the city staff?
The hierarchy is the people. The people rule. We act on their behalf, and we engage, we hire professionals to fulfill the policies that we set, to try to meet and fulfill the vision that we create as a group and as a community. It's interesting to hear some of these suggestions, because a couple days after we fired our city manager, I came up with a 7-page memo with most of these ideas in them. So it's good to hear that people like them. Obviously, we need some structural changes. Again, I think more teamwork, more involvement by the council, greater openness to public input, but somebody's got to be in charge. I'd like to see us move toward a more collegial, more participatory style of management, particularly among department heads, and have them and us sit at the same table. It is so strange that the 7 people are up there on this dais. It's almost like a pulpit, and everybody's sitting down here. That's not right. There really should be more of a collaborative effort between the people who work for the city on the council and the people who are other city employees. We need to work more as a team, but ultimately it's the people who are in charge, and they need to be aware of what's happening, they need opportunities for input, and they need to be listened to.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Tom, you're next.
The city of Minot's got good people working for it, very good people working for it. The city manager system has worked in the past. I can go back to, Bob Schemp, even pre-Bob. So the city manager system has worked. We can't change the system because we had one bad apple. We've got a good system. We just got to get dynamic, good people into those positions to lead us forward.
Okay, Roscoe.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the system's not broken. It's just hire the right people and quit hiring consultants. What do we need consultants for? The consultants sit up there who are representative of the people. So go listen to the people and make their voices be heard up there. I think we got very good department heads. I've worked with many of them in the legislature, and I think they're good people, hardworking people. They're doing the right thing, by and large. Just hire the right people. This isn't that hard in my mind.
Okay, next question as we're moving along. This one deals with COVID-19. So, have your thoughts about community needs or the direction of the city changed as a result of COVID-19, and what can we do coming out of this? Carrie, we're going to start with you. So have your thoughts about community needs or the direction of the city changed as a result of COVID-19?
I think everything has changed in our nation and in our world from COVID-19. The exact impact it's going to have on our community is yet to be seen. I have no doubt there's going to be a negative economic impact of this pandemic on our community. I think we will perhaps see a mental health crisis in this community, particularly among our kids and teenagers whose lives have been thrown into a total disarray, and I think we haven't been paying enough attention to their lives in this. So there's going to be a lot of work to do. I think everybody in the community, whether that's government, whether that's private entities, our nonprofits, our medical professionals, our business owners, we're all going to have to, this is not something one entity is going to be able to figure out. We're going to have to see exactly how bad the damage is, and like we always do as a community, figure it out and fix what we can fix, and but take care of one another and and be kind to one another and take care of our most vulnerable people, our children and our seniors.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Steve, you are next.
This has led, I think, to a reevaluation for a lot of people of a lot of things. I think one of the things that comes from it, for me, is that we need to keep people safe. We need to observe social distancing. We need to be careful. I have a lot of trust in Governor Burgum. I have a lot of trust in our state health authorities, and I think we need to try to follow their opinions and advice as best as we can. At the local level, we need to keep our employees safe, because if the water doesn't get pumped, if the fire truck doesn't show up, if the sewer isn't cleaned, if the garbage isn't picked up, really horrible things happen. So I think the safety of our citizens and our workers is number one priority. Second priority, I think, is we have to be very, very frugal. We have to build up reserves. That's one thing I disagree on with our current financial director. I don't think the future is rosy. I'm not sure how bleak it's going to be, but I think we have to store up our acorns like the squirrel does, because this is going to be a long winter. I think the third thing that we need to do is we need to realize this is going to be a long haul. It's not going to be over in a few months. It may not be over for a couple years, and we have to reorient ourselves. And I think the final thing we need to do is to draw more on the well springs of our strength, of our spirituality, of our resilience as a community, of our faith, of our sense of community, because we are going to be in this for a long haul, and we need to be working together on a long-term basis.
Okay, thank you. Tom Ross, you are next.
It's going to change a lot. And I think not only, if you talk about COVID, you also have to pull in the oil industry too. They hit at the same time. We got hit with a double whammy at the same time, and we have no idea how it's going to pull out at the other end of this tunnel. It just, I mean, we're going to have to pull our department heads in. We're going to have serious discussions about the future and the direction of where we're going to go. That's going to be a challenge for the new city council, is helping Minot weather this storm, yet another storm in this decade.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Roscoe Striley.
Yeah, my biggest concern is the economics of this, the job losses that have occurred and are gonna more that are gonna incur after the SBA PPP loans are up here next month. So, which is going to impact the budget, like we talked earlier. I think what it has done, it's brought people together. I think, by and large. I mean, I'm closer to some of my closer friends than I've ever been. So, I mean, I think it's brought the community together. I think the citizens will be way more engaged in the future on politics in general, or just in ways to propel the city forward. I think we've gotten more efficient as a government, as individuals, as businesses. So coming out of it, yeah, there's some pain, and this next city council is very critical, I think, in making sure Minot ship is sailing in the right direction. I mean, ag is weak, oil is weak. Just the general economy is weak because it's been largely closed. So we do definitely have some challenges, and we'll rise. I have no question we'll rise above them in the future.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott, I think we finished the question with you.
So the reality is that we're going to never live in the world we lived in pre-COVID. We're kind of going to view our lives in a lot of ways as pre-COVID, right now during COVID, and post-COVID. And then when we come out on the other side of this, things are going to be significantly different. I think our challenge for our city council is this is that opportunity to learn how we can be more efficient, how we can run on a slimmer budget, how we can be smarter, how we can change whatever it is that we have to change. Just like so many of us have had to learn under pressure how to make those decisions over the last few months, our city council has to do the same. I don't have all the answers right now, but I want to have that conversation. I want to have the conversation with whoever gets elected, and I want to have the conversation with our community.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Again, thank you to the candidates. We're down to about 10 or 15 minutes left. We're not going to get to all the questions tonight. I want to get through 2 or 3 more if we can, and then one closing opportunity for the candidates to kind of give us their pitch as voters to the voters. So, Steve, we're going to come to you for this next question, start with you. Talking about the 2020 census. It's underway right now. amongst all the other stuff that's happening. What can be done from a city standpoint to encourage participation?
I'm really not sure. We've had a good census task force involving a lot of members of the community, a lot of different organizations, particularly the chamber. They've gone out, they've set up kiosks, and then all of a sudden the boom got lowered in terms of social distancing and not going out. I think at this point what we need to do is encourage people to send in the forms, to register for the census online or mail in forms if they've received them. I think going door to door is just out of the question right now, and filling out questionnaires. So reminding people that that's one of those things you have to do no matter what else happens, is you got to be counted. You got to go to Bethlehem and you got to be counted.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
You know, you can't fill out the census form, so the only other option is to get the word out and encourage. And really, I mean, it's one of those things where we have to communicate the benefit to the community of filling out the census and what that really means to the community. And we have to, it's all hands on deck. I mean, this is important for the city of Minot. It's important for the next 10 years, the direction that we're going. So other than going door to door and with, you know, with what's happened over the last couple months with COVID, that's really put a stymie in it. So our window for opportunity is getting shorter. So we have to come up with ideas to blitz this until the deadline.
Okay, thank you. Roscoe Striley, what can be done to encourage participation in the 2020 census?
Yeah, I think they've done an okay job, honestly. There's a city staff member that's basically, that's been his job for the most part. I think there's been a good effort between private business and that, but I would agree the benefits of getting to an MSA 50,000 is huge for us. I don't know if we can get there, but we sure the heck got to try, because it's a big deal for us for the next 10 years. So getting the word out, I think, is key. Social media, in person, when things settle down a little bit here over the summer, that it's critical, but it's not an easy task. I've filled mine already. I mean, it's we gotta tell or explain probably more in detail what an MSA is, Metropolitan Statistical Area, what the benefits of that are, and why we really need to count every single person we can to try to get to that 50,000.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Yeah, it only takes maybe even a minute or two at most online to fill that out, so appreciate that. Two more, Scott and then Carrie next. So Scott.
So I'm on the Minot Complete Counts Committee, so I've been able to see a lot of the work that's being done, and also how much it was sort of neutered when COVID-19 hit. But that being said, I think this is an opportunity to make that appeal to the city of Minot about how important it is that we hit that 50,000 population. If you're a person that likes restaurants, it means new restaurants in our community. If you're a person that likes different types of stores and stuff like that, it means that. If you're a person who uses public transportation, maybe we can actually get our public bus system to actually go to job service so you can get a job and perhaps get a better car. There's just so many advantages that can come along with getting to that point, and we have to continue to pound that home and realize that it's not just about us as city government wanting more money, but it's about us as a city building a better community.
Okay, thank you. Carrie, please finish us on this question.
Okay, so my moment stage is to do it, right? Census.gov. If you guys are watching on Facebook, YouTube, you're on a computer, go to census.gov, do it. There's an economic bottom line. Everybody's mentioned this. You know what? Who doesn't want us to get to 50,000? Bismarck, Grand Forks, and Fargo. Because if we get to 50,000, we take some money, federal money, away from them. So there's an economic advantage. Do this for yourself, do this for your family, do this for our community. You know, there is more money involved if we hit that 50,000 mark. So no excuses. If you're watching this, you have time after we're done, log off, census.gov, you've got that form, dig it up. Even if you have the form, you can still do it online. You don't have to send that form in. So just no excuses. Let's get her done.
Okay, I love the PSAs we got going here. I like that. Okay, we're gonna, two more questions, then we'll get to wrapping up. So Tom, we'll start with you on this one. Let's make this one another quick one, quick round. In regards to hiring a city manager, is it better to hire within the city or state, or do a larger search that might take longer but might pull in a different pool of candidates? Which would you prefer?
Simple answer to that is we don't need to waste money on a nationwide search. We've got good people in the city of Minot. We should use the talent pool that we've got in the city of Minot and the state of North Dakota. We've got good people.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Roscoe?
Well, couldn't agree more. I will not support hiring someone out from outside the area. I know that's probably frowned upon on some, but we have plenty of really smart people in this city that could step in and do this job. In fact, existing city staff that can do this job and do it really well and be around here for 10 or 15 years. Nothing's worse than losing a leader every 2 or 3 years. It's devastating to an organization and it's devastating to government. So I think the next one has to be someone that wants to be here and someone that isn't going to just jump at the next pay raise to run out of state, which has happened in state positions too. So, I mean, it's a problem. We just, let's hire our own.
Okay. Scott, you're next.
Like tens of thousands of other people, I moved to Minot because there was a good job here. I don't think that we need to limit ourselves by just saying we will only hire somebody locally. We need to make sure we hire the right person. If we haven't learned a lesson that hiring the wrong person for that job is extraordinarily dangerous for our community, what are we doing? I don't know. I hope the person is here. I would love to see somebody on current city government do it. We need to make sure it's a fair competition, and we do our due diligence to make sure we hire the right person. I don't care where they live right now.
Okay, Carrie Evans, you are next.
If I'm on city council and am on the hiring committee, no, I will be on the hiring committee if I'm on city council for this position. I want the best candidates. I want external and internal candidates. This is too important of a position for the city. I think people underestimate the power this position has within our structure of government, and I do not want to be limited by geography. So I want the best pool of candidates to interview for this job.
Okay, Steve, you're up.
Could you repeat the question, please?
In regards to hiring a city manager, is it better to hire within the city or state, or to do a larger, broader search across the nation? It might take longer.
I think to be fair to the citizens and the employees, we have to have an open-ended search. I think we need to be much more particular in the kind of person we're looking for. I think we also have to structure things differently, so it's not like they're just this one magical leader. I think we all need to take our own share, to pull our fair share. So I think it's probably 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I'm actually starting to think that there are some people in-house who could do a very good job. But I think, again, to make sure that we have the best person, we should open it up. But the key thing, again, is not going to be so much the individual. It's the structure they have, the culture, the leadership the mayor and the council show them, and the ability of department heads and rank and file employees and council members to all work as a team. I'd like to take some of the spotlight, some of the focus off of that one person and bring it back to us as a group. I think that's where it belongs. I think that's where it's more likely to be successful.
Okay, thank you, Steve. We're going to go one more question, and then we'll get to our last little 30-second elevator speech or pitch to the voters. So last question before we get to wrapping up here tonight. Roscoe, we'll start with you. What's going to happen with the parking ramps? Could something be done to improve the situation?
Well, we can't knock them down, unfortunately, but or maybe we can. We need to get economic activity downtown Minot. That's what fixes the parking ramps. That we have them right now. Yes, we could knock them down, but we're not going to do that, honestly. So let's get economic activity in downtown Minot. And the perfect way to do that is you got to get the kids down there. Just do the Fargo model. It works. Get Minot State to put a division, a school, a couple buildings, whatever. There's plenty of options there. Get them down. That'll bring the kids down. That'll bring housing down. And I think that helps some of your parking ramp issues. Other than that, go the full legal that you can on it, and don't, let's not sugarcoat it.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything Roscoe just said. I think that the key is economic development in the downtown. As we continue to open up more buildings downtown, as we move some sort of a college downtown and, technical center type place downtown, I think that all of those things begin to bring more bodies into that area, and that's the answer. I think really, it's a lot about employees too. The more employees we can get downtown, because maybe those of us who are just running downtown to run to Charlie's don't want to park in the garage, but instead we park on the street. So I think that it's about economic development in the downtown area. I'd like to go back in my time machine again and make the parking garages go away, but that's not going to happen. So we have to make the best out of it that we can.
Okay, thank you. Carrie, you're up next.
So the first thing I heard when I moved back in 2017 was about these dang parking garages. Wow, they're a thing. I think downtown renaissance absolutely, and activity is what you need. You need to fill up those garages. I love the idea of MSU perhaps expanding some time down there. So that's on the parking ramps. I just want to add a PS to my question about the city manager search. I do, however, feel if there is a local candidate in that pool that is as equally qualified as an external candidate, the city should have an affirmative hiring process for a local candidate. I, as having been the executive director of organizations, very much support and encourage hiring from within if that is the right decision and the right person. And I would continue and give our city employees that trajectory as well, and hope that they would come forward and put their hat in the ring.
Okay, thank you. Steve Padarula.
Parking ramps, one of the biggest mistakes city ever made, but they're here, and we need to maintain them. We need to make sure they're safe. We need to build businesses and other activities downtown so they're used. In 10, 15 years, they probably will be, and we need to hold out until that critical mass comes together. I think one of the lessons from the parking ramp, and I think one of the lessons perhaps with the city manager situation, is to keep our eyes wide open. I think sometimes we get to be desperate for economic development or for some magical person or magical thing to come to town. And I think we're much more likely to get taken advantage of in those kinds of situations. It was a deal that was too good to be true. And I think that's the biggest lesson from the parking ramps, is to be more skeptical, to be more cautious, to think it out. We need to make the best of them we can. The only difference I guess I would have with the other people who've spoken is that if you think Minot State has the money, if you think the State Board of Higher Ed has the money to expand facilities and build buildings, not so. So I think that's part of, again, being realistic. It'd be nice if we had something like Fargo where they had a branch of NDSU downtown, which has really revitalized things. But the way the economy is, the way the situation with enrollment in Minot State is, that's just not realistic right now and may not be for a long time. We need to grow local businesses and not wish for this kind of solution, which would be great, but it's not going to happen given the financial realities of higher ed these days.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Tom, finish us off on this question.
Like everybody else said, we can't go backwards. We've only got to look forward, and we got to take this and try and find an opportunity. Money doesn't solve anything, but it solves a lot of things. So how do we get money down there? We make our community more business friendly. We bring in a dynamic individual who can bring economic development. We're going to have more buildings downtown than we know what to do with. And that's plenty of opportunity to take advantage of those two structures that we have downtown.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and wrap up now. I'd like each of you to do your 30-second elevator speech. Imagine that you just got cornered by a voter here in Minot, and they said, okay, you got me for 30 seconds. Why are you the best candidate for City Council? Scott, we'll start with you. Why are you the best candidate for City Council?
I've got a lifetime of leadership that has taught me how to make the hard decision and how to stick by that decision. I believe that I love this community. As I said earlier, this community isn't the community I was born in, but it is my home. I think that I have a vision for the city to continue our economic development, to make the city a community that people want to live in, to make it a more livable community, to build from within the strengths of this town, to fix those things that are broken. And I look forward to engaging with people. I've spent my entire life working with people from various economic backgrounds, people in the business community, communities of faith, different government entities, and I look forward to continuing that to make Minot a stronger community going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carrie, thank you for being here tonight. Why are you the best candidate for City Council?
So Minot, tonight you've heard from all 5 of us. Now it's your turn to hire 3 of us. Tonight, I hope I communicated the heart of my campaign: transparency, integrity, and accountability. In me, you will get an alderwoman who is smart, has common sense, is down to earth, is willing to ask the hard questions and have the difficult conversations, and who will always be on the side of open government and citizen participation. So Minot, I ask for your vote.
Okay, thank you. Steve, you're next.
I think it would be arrogant to say I'm the best candidate, and I'm not going to say that. I think 5 people here have a good shot at it. 5 people have good ideas. I'd like to be part of that team. I specifically disclaim the mantle of being the best candidate. I don't think that's a good way to look at it. Okay? There are 4 reasons why I would ask for people's votes. First of all, experience. It may seem kind of crazy when the mood seems to be throw the bums out. Well, I've been fighting for these things. I've been fighting for your right to watch these kinds of events, to watch the council for 20 years. And it's good to see finally the tide of opinion shifting in the direction I've been pushing for. Experience counts. We have major challenges, and we need someone who has the experience. The second point I'd make would be understanding. I know what the issues are. I know what the strengths are. I know what the weaknesses are of our staff and of our community. The third point I'd make is empathy. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've spent my life trying to understand and help people understand their feelings and function more effectively. We accept a certain reality and we do the best we can with it. But I think having some feelings, some basic empathy for people is a very good foundation. And the final thing I'd offer, if you will, is common sense. You know, I may have a PhD, but I like to look at things from the standpoint of the average person. My grandfather didn't know how to read and write. They were a farmer in the old country. And I always think of people like him, for whom we have to have a good government, an honest government, a clean government, an effective government, an efficient government. And I like to think that that common sense is very important, probably the most important thing.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Tom Ross, you're next. What makes you a good candidate or the best candidate for city council?
I was born and raised in the city. I have over 50 years of experience in the city of Minot as a resident, as a taxpayer, as a volunteer on several organizations. My passion for this city is endless. I love where I live, and I want to make it better. My dad worked heavy equipment for 40 years. He helped build the skyline of Minot. I'm very proud of my roots here in Minot. I'm very proud that my family chose to live and raise 6 kids in Minot. I'm very proud that I have 3 kids that I raised in the city of Minot. Very proud of that. One thing my dad also taught me was that you leave something better than when you got there. And that's what I will do. I will leave the city of Minot better after I leave the city council than when I got here.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Roscoe Striley finishes off tonight.
Thanks for
candidate for city council.
Thanks for hosting this too. This has been fun. So I went to school for finance. So I think that my finance background, I work at a bank, private bank in town, and my legislative background working on budgets, got put on appropriations my second session as a legislator. So I think those experiences are uniquely, in this time when we're going to be dealing with a lot of budget issues, I think is a unique advantage I could bring. My relationships with the legislature and just in the governor's office. I think we're going to all have to work together as a team, quite frankly, the city, the state, and nationally. I mean, it's a big challenge that we have in front of us as far as the budgets, and it's probably going to be a long-term budget issue here, for long-term meaning a couple years before we see things straighten out. I love this city. I've got 3 young kids. I, like Tom said, definitely want to leave it better when I'm done. I mean, we've got a great community. We've got great people in our community. It's fun. I love to say, like Tom said, that I'm from Minot. it's awesome, and we're well respected in the legislature too. The Minot, the city of Minot, and the people, because we fight for what we want and deserve, quite frankly. So yeah, I mean, I just think my business experience, my leadership that I've had in the past 10 years here, I look forward to using those skills if I can, and I would appreciate everyone's vote.
Okay, thank you. I'll remind everyone that you had a ballot application mailed out to you. Please fill that out. Get your ballot back. Fill that out. Return that ballot, please. That's the way that we're voting in June for the primary this year. I want to thank all the candidates for coming tonight, for giving up a few hours of your evening. Thank you to the viewers for your questions and for your participation. And on behalf of the Minot Area Chamber of Commerce, thank you and have a great night.